Charles Bronson was never far away from trouble. Even as a teenager, he had a lengthy rap sheet for robbery, assault, and vandalism. He was once fired from Tesco for attacking his manager. He even stole a truck before crashing it into someone's car. The driver wasn't seriously injured, so he narrowly avoided serious jail time. In 1974, at the age of 22, he was arrested for armed robbery and given a 7-year sentence. Bronson only enjoyed a few months of freedom over the next 40 years as he continued to violate prison rules, resulting in years being added to his sentence. As of 2024, Bronson has spent almost 50 years in prison. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. Michael Gordon Peterson was born in Luton, Bedfordshire on December 6, 1952. He was one of 3 sons to Ira and John Peterson. Michael's aunt and uncle each served as mayor of Luton in the 60s and 70s. His family moved to Ellesmere Port, Cheshire when he was a teenager, where he first started getting into trouble. At 13, he along with a group of thieves were reprimanded in juvenile court after being caught stealing. Michael enjoyed fighting a lot, ditching school often to do so. He went back to Luton and briefly worked at Tesco before he was fired for attacking his manager. He drifted from job to job, most of them being in factories. His first exposure to prison was on criminal damage charges, which he got after he vandalized some parked cars after an argument with his girlfriend's father. After the trial, he was fined and given probation. Michael then worked as a furniture mover while regularly fighting in his free time. His first serious crime involved him crashing a stolen truck into another car. He then fled the scene as the police arrested him 90 miles away at his parents' house. Since the driver survived the crash, Michael didn't face any jail time, just fines and probation. In 1971, he was convicted of robbery again and given a suspended sentence. He met Irene Kelsey in 1971, who described him as so different from any other boys I knew. He always wore tailored suits, had perfectly groomed sideburns and a Cockney accent. 8 months later in 1972, when Kelsey was 4 months pregnant, the couple got married. Their son, Michael Jonathan Peterson, was born later that year. Michael Sr. was arrested yet again for armed robbery in 1974 when he was 22. He was given a 7-year sentence, and this is where everything started. He was sent to Walton Gaol and soon ended up in the punishment block after attacking 2 other prisoners. He was transferred to Hull in 1975. After refusing prison work, he smashed up a workshop after an altercation with a prison officer and was sent to the punishment block. 6 months were added to his sentence. He continued to be a highly disruptive inmate and was repeatedly placed in solitary confinement for several months. He attacked fellow prisoner John Henry Gallagher with a glass jug and was charged with grievous bodily harm. Charges were later dropped to unlawful wounding and he was convicted. 9 months were added to his sentence. He was then transferred to Army Gaol. Peterson found that his violent reputation preceded him. During 1975 to 1977, he was switched between Armley, Wakefield, Parkhurst, and Walton prisons. He was taken from Yorkshire to London, chained to the floor of a prison van. Michael continued to attack other inmates and damage prison property. He was severely beaten and sent to solitary after punching 2 prison officers. While he was recovering, Peterson was handed the divorce papers by his wife. At Wandsworth, he attempted to poison the prisoner in the cell next to him. He was moved to Parkhurst prison in 1976, where he befriended the Cray twins, whom he described as the 2 best guys I've ever met. He was moved back to Wandsworth after threatening to kill a prison officer. He spent 4 months in isolation after he was caught trying to dig his way out of his cell. After being returned to general population, he caught up with the prisoner who told the guards about his escape plan and attacked him, scarring him for life. The governor of Wandsworth wanted to transfer Michael out of his facility, and only the C-Unit psychiatric wing at Parkhurst was willing to take him. There he attacked a prisoner with a jam jar and was again charged with grievous bodily harm. He attempted suicide and attacked another prison officer, and was transferred again under the Mental Health Act. In December 1978, Michael arrived at Broadmoor, but was soon transferred back to Rampton Secure Hospital. Unable to adapt to the forced medication, he attempted to strangle child rapist and murderer John White. He was apprehended just as White was giving out his last breath. He was returned to Broadmoor where he reunited with Ronnie Cray. Michael described his experience at the hospital, saying, "I witnessed them running into walls, using their heads as rams. I'd seen them fall unconscious doing this. They stabbed themselves with pens, needles, and scissors. One even blinded himself in one eye and another tore out his own testicle. There was one who just kept trying to eat himself, biting his arms, legs, and feet. At Broadmoor, Michael attempted to strangle Gordon Robinson to death, but the silk tie he was using ripped. Following this failure, he became depressed, but then Ronnie Cray arranged a visit from boxer Terry Downs. In 1982, he escaped to the top of Broadmoor, tearing off roof tiles in protest. He caused 250,000 pounds worth of damage in a 3-day protest before he was talked down by his family. Following further treatment, he took up art. Eventually, he received more prison awards than any other inmate for his poems and cartoons. He made a third rooftop protest, this time demanding a prison transfer, and was again talked down. He began an 18-day-long hunger strike and was eventually granted a transfer to Park Lane Hospital in June 18th. I'd been certified mad because of my violence. I was still violent, and they're now certifying me sane. Where's the sanity in that? Isn't the system just as crazy, he said? However, Michael returned back to his previous behavior. He used a broken bottle to stab Merwin Horley, a patient who made sexual advances towards him. He was returned to general population at Risley Remand Center in 1985. In May 1985, Michael pled guilty to grievous bodily harm for the attack on Horley, and 3 years were added to his sentence. Later in the year, he was returned to Walton, where he made another 3-day rooftop protest, causing 100,000 pounds worth of damage. Another year was added on to his sentence. He was moved to Albany, where he punched another convict on his first day in general population. He was quickly moved to Wormwood Scrubs. 2 weeks later, he was returned back to Wandsworth. In 1986, Peterson was transferred 8 times. He choked the governor of Wormwood Scrubs during one particularly violent episode. On January 3, 1987, he was transferred to Gartree, where he served the rest of his sentence in isolation. Upon his release from Gartree, Peterson was met by his family and stayed with his parents for a few days in Aberystwyth. Michael then embarked on a short-lived career in illegal bare-knuckle boxing in London on the advice of Reggie Cray. He changed his name from Michael Peterson to Charles Bronson in 1987 on the advice of his fight promoter, Paul Edmonds. He had never even seen a film starring the American actor Charles Bronson. On New Year's Day 1988, much to the surprise of his girlfriend Allison, he robbed a jewelry shop, keeping a ring for her and then selling the rest. On January 7, 1988, he was arrested on his morning jog. The arresting officers charged him under his fighting name, Charles Bronson, and he decided at that moment to give up the name Michael Peterson. He was returned to Leicester Prison as Bedford Prison refused to house him on account of his past behavior during his first prison term there. His defense had looked strong as eyewitnesses refused to testify due to fear of revenge. Allison retracted her initial testimony and became the prosecution's main witness. This removed Bronson's alibi and gave the prosecution all the evidence needed to win the case. Bronson made a failed bid to reach the prison's roof and was transferred to Brixton. In June 1988, he pled guilty to armed robbery and was sentenced to 7 years. Bronson was taken back to Wandsworth before being transferred to Full Sutton. There he spent time in solitary for fighting and throwing water on the governor. In 1989, he was moved to Long Larton and seemed to settle at the prison. He eventually went over the edge and ran out of his cell in the nude, clutching a spear he had crafted from a broken bottle and a broom handle. He spent 2 months at Bristol before being moved to Birmingham, Winchester, and back to Wandsworth in September 1989. He punched 2 prison officers at Gartree and took the deputy governor hostage at Franklin. At Parkhurst, he was attacked when at least 2 other inmates stabbed him in the back several times. Bronson refused to speak to the guards about it. He eventually recovered from the attack and was released from prison in November 1992. Bronson spent 53 days as a free man before being arrested, this time for conspiracy to commit robbery. He was processed at the newly opened Woodhill prison. He insisted that his girlfriend, Kelly Ann, her friend Carol, and her lover were lying to the police in order to get him locked away. On February 9, 1993, the robbery charges were dismissed. He was given a £600 fine for breaking the nose of Kelly Ann's lover. 16 days later, he was arrested for conspiracy to rob and for possession of a sawn-off shotgun. On remand in Woodhill, he took a librarian hostage, demanding an inflatable doll, a helicopter, and a cup of tea from police negotiators. He released the hostage after being disgusted when the man farted in front of him. Bronson was taken from Belmarsh to Bullingdon Prison for his trial. He pleaded guilty to possessing the shotgun, but not guilty to the conspiracy charges. He told the jury he wanted to use the shotgun to commit suicide. Yeah, right. On September 14, 1993, he was found guilty of intent to rob, but not guilty of conspiracy to rob. His co-defendant was found innocent of all charges. Bronson was given an 8-year sentence. Bronson was taken from Belmarsh to Wakefield, where he spent 40 days in isolation. He was transferred to Hull in November, where he spent a number of months without any incidents. That is, until he took Deputy Governor Adrian Wallace hostage on Easter Monday, 1994. He was overpowered by guards and was transferred to Leicester. He was sent back to Wakefield, where he was confined to what was known as the Hannibal Cage, previously occupied by serial killer Robert Maudsley. While there, prison officers encouraged Bronson to take up art, so he began to concentrate on drawing cartoons. His father died in September 1994 during a period where Bronson was in constant solitary confinement and was moved almost weekly. He attacked the governor at High Down, who had felt safe enough to visit Bronson on his own, telling his prison officers, "He's okay with me." At Lincoln, he was allowed to spend time around children with Down syndrome. He was taken out of solitary and placed back on the prison wings after getting along well with the children. He was then returned to isolation after returning late from his 30-minute exercise break. In April 1996, he was sent back to Belmarsh after taking a doctor hostage in Birmingham. 5 months later, an Iraqi hijacker bumped into him in the canteen, walking by without an apology. After a long period of resentment, Bronson took 2 other Iraqi hijackers along with another inmate hostage in a cell. He was losing it badly, ranting about his dead father and saying any funny business would result in him snapping necks. He sang and laughed, forcing the Iraqis to tickle his feet and call him general. He demanded a plane to take him to Libya along with 2 Uzi submachine guns, 5,000 rounds of ammunition, and an axe. He released the non-Iraqi hostage, but began chanting, "I want ice cream." He felt guilty after hitting one of the hostages with a metal tray and therefore insisted that he be hit over the head 4 times so as to call it even. He slashed himself 4 times with a safety razor, but agreed to release the Iraqi hostages and walked back to the segregation unit. Another 7 years was added to his sentence. This was reduced to 5 years on appeal. My eyes are bad due to the years of unnatural light I've had. My vision is terrible. I have had to wear shaded glasses even to read. Years of solitary have left me unable to face the light for more than a few minutes. It gives me terrible headaches if I do. Years of loneliness in small cells have left me paranoid about people invading my space. I now can't stand people getting too close, crowding me. I hate people breathing on me and I hate smelly bodies coming near me. Mouths to me are simply for eating, never for kissing. A man needs a routine to cope with such an extreme situation. For me, it is my push-ups and sit-ups. I also pace the room and count each step. Some I know lie down on their beds for 3 hours on their left side, 3 hours on their right, and 3 hours on their back. In October 1996, Bronson was unsettled as he had an unexpected visit from Robert Taylor, a doctor instead of his regular lawyer. He then took Taylor hostage, but released him 30 minutes later after coming to his senses. Taylor did not report the incident. In January 1999, he took Phil Danielson, a civilian education worker, hostage after he had criticized one of Bronson's drawings. Bronson tore up the prison, throwing refrigerators and furniture around. He was shocked and knocked unconscious for a few minutes when pulling a washing machine out of the wall. The rampage lasted for 44 hours before he released Danielson. Bronson was transferred back to Whitemore. For the incident, Charles was sentenced to life in prison. Danielson received £65,000 in compensation from the Home Office in an out-of-court settlement, although the prison did not admit liability for its negligence in failing to protect a civilian employee. In 2001, Bronson married again, this time in HMP Woodhill, to Fatima Sarah Raymond, a Bangladeshi-born divorcee. She had seen his picture in an article about him in a newspaper and began writing to him. Raymond had visited Bronson 10 times before they married. She had worked at a women's shelter before they met, but she lost her job when her employer found out about her relationship. For a short time, Bronson converted to his wife's faith of Islam and wished to be known as Charles Ali Ahmed, but did not change his name legally. After 4 years, he and Raymond divorced, and he renounced Islam. During this period, Bronson appealed against his life sentence. 3 appeal court judges rejected the application in April 2004. Bronson remained a Category A prisoner when he was moved to Wakefield High Security Prison. He had a parole hearing in September 2008. This was postponed when his lawyer objected to a 1-hour parole interview, requesting a full day to deal with Bronson's case. The hearing took place on March 11, 2009. The board refused to grant him parole. In August 2013, a petition with 10,000 signatures was presented to 10 Downing Street calling for his release. In an enclosed note, Bronson appealed to Prime Minister David Cameron for him to be able to live what's left of my life and not be buried in the prison system. On February 28, 2014, Bronson violently attacked the prison governor in a television room at HMP Woodhill over a dispute that his mail was being withheld, including 2 letters from his mother. The governor had serious bruising. In July 2014, Bronson was sentenced to 2 years. The prison also accepted that his mail may have been unsuccessfully processed. You just said you wanted to get out of jail, and now you're attacking people again. Like, what do you think is going to happen? In August 2014, Bronson announced that he was changing his name again to Charles Salvador, in tribute to the artist Salvador Dali. In a handwritten statement on his website, Salvador explained that the old me dried up. Bronson came alive in 1987. He died in 2014. Under this new alias, he began creating works of art described as fantasy reality. A collection of these works were auctioned in October 2014. Salvador proposed to actress Paula Williamson during a prison visit on February 13, 2017, and she accepted. She had been visiting him for 5 months. Paula says that Charlie is a changed man. It is my hope that he will be released by my 40th birthday in August 2020. Williamson, who had minor roles in Coronation Street in Emmerdale, married Salvador in the prison chapel on November 14, 2017. In July 2018, it became known that Bronson had asked for a divorce. Photo evidence of a young British man motorboating her chest and inviting him and his friends to her apartment was leaked to a newspaper. On July 29, 2019, Williamson, aged 38, was found dead at her home in Stoke-on-Trent. Her death was not considered suspicious by the police. That seems kind of coincidental. In November 2018, Bronson was found not guilty at Leeds Crown Court after being tried for attempting to cause grievous bodily harm with intent. The incident had involved Mark Doherty, the governor at Wakefield Prison. For the first time in 44 years in prison, I never intended to be violent. I had never meant to hurt the governor. He was acquitted on all charges and he was moved to HM Prison Woodhill. In early 2023, it was reported that Bronson would go before the parole board in March. He was denied, with the board stating that it was not satisfied that Mr. Salvador was suitable for release, nor did the panel recommend to the Secretary of State that he should be transferred to an open prison. As of now, he's still in prison, and I feel like he'll stay in prison for the rest of his life. He's had so many chances to stay out of prison, but I feel like his temper. They're not going to let you out of prison if you keep taking people hostage and beating up prison guards and beating up officers and beating up other inmates and attacking other people. You turned like a 7-year sentence into a life sentence. But I mean, I guess he does have a real reputation as a mean guy, like a violent person, but just like, man, you could have been out of prison decades ago. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy, hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. I'm out. Peace.